Dr. Bonner is with us. And we have about 19 participants right now. We'll give it just a couple of minutes as people are coming in, and then we'll get started. It's a really beautiful day.
Better than yesterday when it was pouring.
Yeah. Although we need the rain. We need the rain.
My garden needs the rain terribly.
Yeah.
So does my well.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So let's get started. Good morning again. My name is Carrie Greene. I'm representing the school committee and hosting this meet and greet. We have with us Liz LaFon from the MASC, Jonathan Knopper from the district, and Dr. Portia Bonner, who is with us here as our candidate. We are recording this session, and the goal is to have an informal conversation. It's a little bit difficult when we're all boxes on a screen, but we'll try our best. It's not a formal interview in that sense. That will follow immediately after this informal meet and greet. And that will be with the school committee. You're all welcome to stay on for that. So Dr. Bonner has over 26 years of experience in the field of public education, including time spent as a teacher, department chair, assistant superintendent, and as a superintendent both in Massachusetts and Connecticut. Dr. Bonner, would you like to start by telling us why you're interested in us as a district?
Yes, well, first off, good morning to everyone. And I find that your district is very unique in the fact that you combine two towns. It's a small district, but it's a district with very, very strong backbone. You could tell in terms of the rigor and strength of the academics, the curricular programs that are offered. And for me, I am looking for a district that's small, that is poised in the right position in terms of its effects on students and preparing them for the future workforce, but also globally and able to enact with people who are of diverse backgrounds. And it's just an opportunity that doesn't come around often. Let's just put it that way in terms of a small district. My background, I've been in districts very, very large and then also mid-size. My last current district in East Haven, the population was about 3,100 students. And we had 9 schools. And so very much larger than your district. However, I can see in terms of some of the uniqueness of your district, and I can match it up with East Haven in terms of the diversity. East Haven, the demographics was about 70% to 30%, 30% being minority, and that was growing in terms of the people who were moving in the district. And then also in terms of our focus of just strengthening our relationship with the community. So I find that Mount Greylock is definitely a community that has a lot to offer, and I think that I could fit in nicely there.
Terrific, thank you. So your voice is still a little warbly. I don't know if there's any way. Liz, do you have any suggestions, or Jonathan, do you have any suggestions of how to get more audio clarity?
Yeah, typically the only way to strengthen the signal from here is if she turns off her video. So I don't.
Yeah, we don't really want to do that.
No.
Okay. Can everybody hear okay? Is that?
I can hear it's clear coming through to me. It's a little warbly, but quite clear.
Okay. All right, great. So if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask a question. You can type it in the chat. You can let us know in the chat that you have a question and I can call on you. And we'll get started with Amy. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. My name is Amy Perry Mercier. I live in Lanesboro. I have 3 children. I'm an attorney here in Western Massachusetts, and I also am the vice chair of the Special Education Parents Advisory Council. And so my question to you is, could you describe your experience with special education and your philosophy with regard to special education?
Okay. So I've had quite a bit of experience with special education in terms of not only interacting in the classroom. I was one of a few teachers who did a co-teaching partnership when I was teaching at the high school. And we won't say how many years ago that was. But as an administrator, I've had the ability to actually strengthen our co-teaching program. We really wanted to try to be inclusive of our students instead of separating them out of the classroom. And so we used a team approach, and there's many different facets that you can use in terms of co-teaching. And then also working with our paraprofessionals in terms of them being a support and not actually taking over and doing the work for our students, but actually being more of a facilitator and co-teacher and doing small groups. So I've had experience in terms of that, in terms of implementing that in 3 of the districts that I worked in, and actually doing professional development in that area when I served as assistant superintendent. Then also, you know, serving as a superintendent, working with our director of special ed and really staying focused and in tune in terms of what's happening, but bringing programs back into the district as opposed to shipping students out. We thought that it's very, very important to keep students in their home district so they feel a part of their community. So for me, in terms of my philosophy about special ed, at all times to look at the needs of the students and to really be inclusive in programs. There are times though in terms of where students may benefit with pullouts, but as long as part of their experience is with their regular ed peers, that's important. Then just a brief mention, I know that districts really struggled in terms of continuing with plans for students when we did the distance learning, and I'm sure your district as well felt that impact. You know, in terms of how do you continue doing, fulfilling that IEP when you are doing remote learning. And so there are things that can be done. There's so many different apps and technology that we can utilize now to really continue and strengthen our programs. So that's my background in terms of special ed. And then I also personally, I have a nephew who's dear to my heart who is also special needs.
Thank you, Dr. Bonner. Continuing on that topic of remote learning, we have a question. What is your perspective regarding students returning to school in the fall?
Oh, wow. So this is definitely a heavy, heavy topic on many superintendents' hearts right now in terms of doing what's best and looking at the safety, not only of the children, but also as the educators. So you really have to be balanced. And then your community, your parents, how do they feel? And so there are 3 different levels to really look at in terms of the needs of the students. Yes, it's a secure setting. You want it to be a secure setting for them. It's something that causes the day to be consistent and flow. It goes back to their routine, so there's less anxiety. But you want to do it. You want to do it slowly. You don't want to just throw them back into the ring. And then there's so much that has to be planned in terms of the social emotional aspect as opposed to just the content. And then looking at how do we recapture that learning loss that happened during the time that they were out of school. And so, and then the educators, are they mentally and ready to come back in terms of what that's going to look like and to interplay and interact with students? And then with all the fear factors that are being released in our media in terms of trying to discern, is it a risk or, or not to go back into the classroom? And then dealing with parents, some parents are fearful of letting their child go. They don't know about the safety. And so for me, I know that right now, the Commissioner of Education has asked all the districts in Massachusetts to come up with a reopening plan, and within that plan there should be 3 aspects. One being, if you're going to have a staggered opening, a hybrid model. The other being just full reopening, and then the distance learning, which I know that most commissioners are moving away from because they really want students back in the school building. So I know here in Connecticut, they're giving parents the option to choose which of the 3 components of the plan. In terms of Mount Greylock, I know that, I don't know if you've submitted a plan yet, if you're there, but I know that there was a kind of a committee, I believe, that was working on the plan, and that plan is due mid-August. So I don't know where your interim superintendent is with that plan, but I hope that there has been conversation with all the stakeholders, not only the families and students, but the educators and school committee members to decide in terms of which direction is best for that community to go. Do you feel that it's going to be a safe environment and having everything in place? So pretty incredible time that we're in. I don't think that anyone knows what is the right way, but the key is to determine what is going to be the best way for that community, and that's what we have to look at.
Thank you. So Ralph, I'm going to hold off on your question and have the students go first, if that's okay. So Malina, why don't you go ahead, and then Jenna.
Hi, I'm Malina Woodbury, and I am going to be a junior this year, and I have a question for you about how you would be able to incorporate the whole student body into important school decisions instead of just the councils that our school offers for students.
Okay. All right, so I'm glad you said the whole student body, because normally when I am working with students, I have representatives from each of the classes, and it's not necessarily students that I select, but it's students that the student body selects to represent them. And I actually have a time where I set aside monthly where I meet with students of the student body, particularly the high school level, and really talk about what are some of the things that concern them, and how can we move forward. So for instance, with the reopening issue, so I'm hoping that there are student representatives on the committee that are really sharing their concerns about, reflecting on what has taken place, the fact of graduation and missing out important things that happened during the course of the year, to what this year may look like. And no one really knows. We can plan, but we also need to learn to be flexible, but take what we have learned from this former year and incorporate that as well, Elena. But my thing is to allow the students to select who's going to represent with them. But I want to tell you, I do have an open door policy. My last district that I served in, my office was actually in the high school. And so students would pretty much, if they wanted to, if I was available, they would stop by and or they would leave a message and say, hey, can I come and see you? I have something I want to share. So even in that size of a district, I had that kind of rapport where students felt comfortable enough to approach. So that's another piece as well. So hopefully I answered your question.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Jenna.
Hi, I'm Jenna Simpson. I'm going to be a sophomore in the fall, and Mount Greylock tends to have a culture around you have to be high achieving in grades and go to a good college and all of that to actually be a good student, and that's obviously not necessarily true. And I think I was wondering what you would do to help ease the anxiety that exists within the Greylock community that you have to be the best at everything all the time.
Wow. So Jenna, coming from my background, I had parents who pushed me and who were very much like that. And now through all of my experience, I learned that that really doesn't matter. You know, we push for the best and we push for success, but success can be measured by the fact that you are able to do and enjoy or be passionate about something. And I know with not only in your community, but even in our society, we push for what determines what's success. And so if you enjoy doing what you do, like for instance, let's say you play an instrument or you are a drama student and you do it well and that you're able to grow from that, to me, that is success. And so how do we change that mindset in a community that really says, oh, you got to go to Harvard, or, you know, we look at the top 5 students and where they're going and we start to lift that up. Well, sometimes when we have conversations, we have to lift up other students that are doing other things. And so when you start to do that, we'll say, oh, wow, they're doing something very amazing that's making an impact on not only themselves, but their community. And so let's start to lift that up and to be more community minded. So that is a societal problem, not just your community, but to then as a district determine what do we see as success, and that goes in the mission and the vision and the goals of the district. You know, what do we see as successful?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So let's go to Ralph, and then I have a question on the chat, and then Alicia. Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Ralph Hammann, former teacher of 35 years in high school and a present father of an 8-year-old at Wes. My question has probably somewhat been answered already, but I'll just state this briefly. Yesterday, the New York Times reported a study that shows that very young children, according to a St. Jude hospital virologist, the study shows that definitely young kids do have levels of virus that may be even higher than adults, and that it would be surprising it would not be surprising if they were able to shed the virus and spread it to others. I know you've already spoken to this, but given that information, how do you respond to that? And if you found yourself in disagreement with the majority of parents surveyed in terms of going back to school, how would you handle that?
Okay. So the first piece in terms of New York Times, which right now we have to weigh what we see and read in the New York Times, that comment about children being carriers, well, we know that the virus spreads, and even though the scientists are not saying that it's airborne, it is by the air. We know that, but we don't know specifically any other ways that it's transmitted. It is a deadly virus, and deadly in the sense that, you know, scientists have not determined whether the death comes from the virus or the death comes from whatever else the body may actually have. And so now you guys, my science background is coming out there a little bit, but listening to what they say and then taking what the CDC is saying and suggesting, you know, right away, we can't keep flip-flopping based upon what we read, and there's something new every day. But as a community, to really determine, you know, what do we feel is best, not only for our children, but for our educators. You know, how do we keep things safe? If we have a robust remote learning program, and when I mean robust, meaning that you're basically doing the same thing that you would do in the classroom through distance learning, then, and we can prove that to the Commissioner of Education, then that might be the best way to go. And so I will tell you that when community members want something, it is so important to have an ear to that, because you know, even if it goes against what I think might be best, I as superintendent really share and suggest based upon research and knowledge what I feel is best. But if we have a community that wishes, let's say that they wish that we would continue on with the distance learning, you know, the remote learning. If that's what the community wants, then that's what we should work towards doing. You know, regardless of my philosophy or so on, I'm going to do what is the wishes of the school committee and the community, what is best. And I won't go back and say I told you so, because once we've made a decision, we're in it together and we work together to achieve that. And let's say it doesn't, you know, we make it work somehow. There is one district which I kind of like this plan, and I will say why. They're not coming back in full fold. They are actually starting with half days. First of all, to see if the process actually works, you know, in terms of the safety and the cleaning and keeping kids in cohorts and the mask wearing. And then it also begins to ease kids into that, because they're not used to wearing masks for that length of a time. So, and then the approach of maybe staggered days, meaning that there's a cohort of kids that come in Monday and Tuesday. Then Wednesday you have a day of just cleaning out, a day for teachers to do professional development, get themselves together. And then there's Thursday and Friday. But while another cohort comes in on Thursday and Friday. But while that's happening, you're still providing the online learning so that kids who are home can actually tap in to what's going on in their classroom. But that allows for less students to be in the classroom at the time, so you can really truly have that social distancing. You know, on average, usually there's about 20 to 25 kids in a classroom. Well, you know, looking at the square footage of a classroom, really to keep that size down, you know, you kind of need that staggered approach. But there are so many things that you can do, and teachers working together who have they've done a fantastic job, first of all, for just learning how to do the things that they had to do at short notice. But work together where you've got teachers switching off teaching lessons and creating videos that kids can go back or they can tap into the classroom. There are things that you can do, that blended learning approach, where it will be a safer thing. It's kind of the midway of the extreme of total distance learning or total reopening and doing as is. So hopefully I answered that question, because we are definitely in a time where it's going to be difficult decision making, and no one knows the right answer right now. But we have to work with what the community wants.
Thank you, Dr. Bonner.
You're welcome.
Alicia, do you mind if I have Jack go first?
No, that's okay.
All right, thank you. We have 5 minutes, so we're going to try to get these two questions in, Jack and then Alicia.
I'll be quick. So I'm a junior at Greylock, or I'm going to become a junior at Greylock. And one thing that I found when like transferring from elementary school to the high school is that it's a little daunting for students, mostly because the two major schools are West and Lanesboro Elementary. And so when you combine, you get half your class is just new kids you don't know. Do you think when in the younger years you would be able to incorporate those two schools together on a field trip or something, to make the transition easier, because you are they're familiar faces and they're not total strangers?
Okay, excellent question. So there are things that can be done. As a matter of fact, our distance learning has taught us these things, and I will share some projects that we did with schools in my former district. So again, when you have two schools, Lanesboro, and then you have Williamstown Elementary School coming together, there are things that you can do, projects that you can do from one site to the other, where you actually use technology, where you can tap in and do projects together. So for instance, we had one project where a school was doing, it was a science project, you know, and measuring growth and looking at hydroponics and so on. And so they actually tapped into, and it was actually two other schools. So on that day, they would tap into their Chromebooks and actually be talking and looking at students and seeing what's going on in one classroom and actually talking and having conversations. So Google Classroom Suite actually sets up a platform where you can begin to do that thing, to do something like that. And so when you start to interact and know that you're doing the same projects and working hopefully on the same curriculum, so you're working together and you start to interact with students, and hopefully after this social distancing passes for us, that field trip can also be where you combine and come together and finish the project, whether if it's plant growing, you can do the wetlands or whatever. It depends on whatever you're focusing on. But so, yeah, those are things that can be planned within the curriculum so that it's not something outside of that. And then the other piece is too, is that with that exchange is also just the adjustment of going from the elementary schools into the middle and high school. You know, having that time where students can come up and begin to introduce themselves to the building itself and the flow and the way that the scheduling goes, and maybe have a mentor of someone who's already in the building to be able to do that as well. So there are things that can be done, and definitely I would say just those school projects can really open up doors quite a bit.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Alicia, 2 minutes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Alicia Woodbury. I'm an employee of the district, also a parent of 2 high school students at Mount Greylock. And I have a question on diversity and multicultural and your thoughts on handling that and the problems with racism and bullying as a parent of an Asian adopted child as well.
Okay. All right, so I know that one of the 3 goals that the district has in terms of their school improvement plan is to really focus on cultural proficiency. And so for me, I would first see where the district is. And now with everything that is occurring in our nation and bringing things to the forefront, having courageous conversations around, you know, where we are in terms of our community in celebrating diversity, addressing the implicit bias / stereotypes. And then, you know, and you start with the educators. First of all, you need to kind of know where they are. And really addressing some things, you know, and really reaching into it's kind of a self-awareness, self-look in terms of you may not know that it's actually in you, that, you know, that you feel this way about other groups. And so addressing that, and then taking a look at, and so you could do a lot of training around that, a lot of conversations around that, encouraging the social science classes to really be brave enough to really have conversations and debates and discussions around those issues and concerns. But the climate must be so in the schools where people who are not of the majority feel comfortable and safe to know that they can, that they feel valued, that they feel that they have a voice at the table, that they feel important. And so that comes with not only the inclusion within the curriculum and content that we teach, but also in terms of our policies and our procedures and so on. And so it becomes really a conversation that happens not only at the educators level and students level, but then it could also broaden out to the community level. When I served in Hamden as assistant superintendent, we did a lot of work with National Urban Alliance, and so we had courageous conversations. We even opened it up to the community, and so we would have conversations about race, and we had seminars and discussions, and there was a lot of healing, and then tension first, but then also healing. And so know that, you know, you're going to have a little bit of that unrest, but you've got to get past that to be able to heal. And so for me, in terms of my background, I've been trained in that protocol in terms of courageous conversations. I also had some other work in cultural proficiency And I know that that is a major concern. And of course, you know, we talk about equity at all times. And so we want to make sure that all of our students have the opportunities to be able to achieve to their highest potential and have those opportunities. So if they want to go on to further areas, that we provide those opportunities for every child and prepare them in the same way.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Bonner. So we've come to the end of our time for the meet and greet. I want to thank all the participants and thank you again for participating with our community. There is a survey in the chat section that Liz LaFawn posted. If you have participated in the meet and greet and could take a moment to fill out the survey, give us your feedback. The answers to the responses to your survey go directly to the MASC and they will provide us a summary, provide the school committee with a summary this afternoon. All right, I think the chair of the school committee is on now. Christina Conry, I'm going to hand this over to you. And I think our meeting begins in about 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, let's see who's here. I see Al. See you, Carrie. Let's see. Oh, there's Molly.
Hello,
Hi, Al.
Carrie, Liz, how are you?
Good morning. How are you?
11:05, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'd like to call the Mount Greylock Regional School District School Committee meeting to order. It's Friday, July 31st, 2020. It is 11:05 a.m. and we are meeting remotely via Zoom. Per Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, MGLC 30A, Section 20, the public will not be allowed to physically access this school committee meeting. So good morning, everyone. I'm Christina Conry, the school committee chair. I've been on the committee for almost 2 years. I'm a Lanesboro resident and a parent with 2 children in the district. And I just wanted to run through the process for this interview session quickly. I will be the moderator for this interview session, and each school committee member will introduce themselves prior to asking their first question. You should have 12 questions plus outlined follow-up questions in front of you. We approximate each question will take 5 minutes to answer. If there is time within that 5 minutes, we will ask a follow-up question. I will I will clap my hand, Dr. Bonner, if we are within 30 seconds of the of time left to answer the question. So welcome, Dr. Bonner. Thank you so much for applying to lead our wonderful district. Dr. Portia Bonner has over 26 years of experience in the field of public education, including time spent as a teacher, department chair, assistant superintendent, and as a superintendent, both in Massachusetts and Connecticut. Dr. Bonner, before we begin with our questions, I'll turn it over to you for any introductory remarks.
Well, first of all, good morning to all of you. Hopefully you can hear me. And I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to come before you and to share some of my background, and hopefully I come out to be the answer to all of your needs somehow. Mount Greylock is a fantastic district, although it's smaller than some of the districts that I've served in. I believe that my experience could actually pick up where your superintendent has left off in terms of continuously providing a rigorous, rich curriculum for the children of the 2 towns that the regional district serves. And I'm just excited to be a part of this. It's a little different in terms of interviewing. I feel like I'm watching the game of Foursquare, trying to figure out who's speaking now and looking at your faces. But I'm excited about this. And I know that we are definitely in some very unique times, exciting times though, because it's an opportunity for education to have a facelift if we take this opportunity to really make the changes that may be better for our children, even though adversity causes a little chaos. But we can do some great things if we work together and to put our minds forward to doing what's best for our children and our future.
Thank you very much. Okay. Jamie Art will be reading our first question and will introduce himself first.
Hi, Dr. Bonner. I am Jamie Art. I've been on the school committee for about a year now, and I have two children who have been in the district, one who just recently graduated and another who's a rising 10th grader. And as you can see from the question sheet, my first question is, what do you consider the most important contributions your administration or past administration has made to the education of its students or to the community?
Okay. Let's see. I will start with, well, I'll summarize in terms of probably all my experiences. Whatever district or wherever I have served, I feel that I have left a legacy in terms of where students really felt valued and appreciated, where they had a voice at the table, even in terms of some community members where there were some groups that really felt that they were isolated and separated from having a voice at the table when it comes to decision making and planning and how it affects their child. And so, and for that, it's just more about making those connections within the community. And then the other piece is too, is that really encouraging rigor in the curriculum. My strength, as you all probably have seen in my resume, is curriculum and instruction. And so for me, it's important that we bring rigor within the content in which we teach. And that comes with really incorporating 21st century skills, being able to think and to problem solve, you know, especially in today's world, to be able to discern what is truth and what is not, or to take, even though it's factual, does not necessarily mean that it is for the benefit of our society. So it's really about getting kids to not just learning the everyday content, but being able to apply it, to make good decisions, to be analytical in their thinking. And so that comes with working with teachers, you know, in terms of what their instruction looks like, and taking that rich curriculum and making it so that students are engaged and motivated and wanting to participate in their learning and taking from that. So I would think that probably those two things are probably the biggest pieces that I can say about my experiences.
Thank you. Christina, you're muted.
We have 2 minutes and 40 seconds left for a follow-up if you wanted to ask your follow-up.
So thank you. So my follow-up question is whether you would describe a mistake you made in your professional life and how you handled it, and if there's something you wish you had done differently, what that would be.
Okay, so we know that we learn from mistakes. Actually, mistakes are necessary for you to grow, and in the sense that you've got to reflect on what you did wrong, and so that whenever you come into a situation similar to that, that you don't do it again. And so I will say that probably my first superintendency, I went into it with bright eyes and very optimistic, and thought that everybody was about children, that they cared for children. And I did not think of the political side of education. So that just shows you coming out of the classroom bright-eyed. But I had to learn quickly that when you become an administrator, that there's just so much political agendas that come to play, that you really have to know, first of all, you have to be grounded in your own beliefs, but to still maintain that integrity and so on. And so I would say that my first superintendency, I had a perception of what it was, and then it turned out to be something different. And so I had to quickly change in terms of how I was going to be able to navigate with people whose agendas were very, very different from my own, that really was not about children, you know, and so how to navigate that. So I will share with that.
Thank you very much. The next question and introduction will come from Allie Carter.
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm a Williamstown resident. I have 3 kids, 2 of whom are at West. And my question for you is, if you could please describe your decision-making process when attempting to balance the costly educational needs and the fiscal realities of different district towns, especially when those towns have differing abilities to absorb assessment increases. And if you have any examples you can share, that would be great.
Okay, excellent. So first of all, in terms of the decision making, I am not a top-down person. I do work with my peers, my colleagues, you know, that are at central office, as well as and a part of central office, especially in your region, would also include the principals, who are very, very key. And then also the community members and so on. I would draw from all the sides of the key stakeholders before making a decision. And the key is that school committee members are actually the ones who set the governing and the policy. So for the superintendent, I would share and recommend what I feel is best based upon the things that I have garnered from all the people who are collaborating with me. Now, in terms of fiscal stability in finances, making the decision in terms of, you know, what has to be reduced and to balance a budget, or what has to go. Well, anytime when you're planning a budget, what's most important is that you keep students at the forefront in terms of their direct needs, and then comes the indirect. And so for me, what is important for the child in the classroom? So of course, having a teacher who is more than proficient in their academics. So strength there. So, and then also having the resources in order to learn. So such as having the appropriate technology available to them, having, we've really moved from textbooks, but having the textbooks, having all the resources in which they need. And then you start to look at what the indirect effects. And so for me, again, you know, when it comes to budgeting, you really want to see what matters in terms of students, and then the indirect costs, you know, like for instance, transportation, getting kids there, and nutrition, all those other things, wellness. So those things are incredibly important. And so you have to have a balance. But realistically, we know that each year budgets increase. They increase exponentially due to salaries or whatever other resources that we have to pay out for. And so to balance the budget and to not put such a weight on each of the towns that participate in this regional district, that actually have certain amounts in which they give towards the budget, you know, we have to be very reasonable in our budgeting and be very strategic in planning. And so for me, it's not just to plan a budget for the short term, but to look long term down the road. You know, and I'll give it, for instance, in East Haven, our student population is declining, and was declining at that time. And so we have 9 schools. There's really no need for the 9 schools. So we started to plan about closing the schools and grouping populations and what that would look like and what the effects would be. And so by closing a school for us, that was a savings of about $1.2 million. And then, but we had to have a plan that was agreeable to the community. So working with the community and in Connecticut, we call them school boards. Massachusetts, you guys are unique with school committee. And so working with them and having a plan and working with, actually we worked with architects to take a look at the needs of the buildings to be able to collapse or to combine schools and if we needed to update facilities. So these are the things to have conversations about, not only with community members and so on, but to really allow parents to have a voice at the table, communities to have a voice at the table. And before we started to close schools and so on, we had opportunities for parents to weigh in and come and speak during community. We had meet and greets and we had conversations and we did postings and so on to keep the community aware in terms of the needs and what we were doing. So it's really about making sure the communication is there and that we allow all voices to be heard. Okay.
Thank you. I will read the next question. What are your strategies for fostering positive relationships with students, parents, teachers, unions, staff, and the school committee? How do you ensure that diverse voices are encouraged and listened to, yet decisions are still made in a timely fashion?
Okay. So in that, first of all, some things that I did in both of my, well, actually a couple of districts, was that and I shared this in our meet and greet earlier, that with students, it's important for them to have a voice at the table. And I know that most times there's already kind of a governance council that's set up in this high school. But I actually had a student group that I would meet with monthly, where they would actually share with me in terms of what was going on, talk a little bit about the climate of the building, but it gave them an opportunity to have a voice at the table. And these are the things that I would share with our school committee and board members. And then also we had students that would actually come and share at school committee member meetings so that they would talk about the things that were occurring. They actually had time for their reporting. So we were always kept abreast in terms of what was going on in the schools, and that's incredibly important. And then during that time too, I have to say that I learned a lot about social media because the kids were like, okay, Miss B is what they would call me. I had to tweet. So, you know, anytime something unique was happening or lifting up either a team that was playing the sports or lifting up the band or competitions, I would do that. So there was always the posting and keeping kids in the loop in terms of what was going on and the sharing, but also lifting up our students and celebrating them. In terms of parents, I had also, besides the school councils and so on, we had coffee clutch time where I would actually circle around and go to schools and spend the morning greeting parents who were coming in, dropping off their kids. And we called it coffee clutch because we would have the parents usually have their cup of coffee or tea, or they could grab one because I would have a pot of coffee or so. And just to really talk about things that are going on in their school. And when that happened, of course, the principal was there with me. And so we kind of shared. And so it gave parents another opportunity or venue to share some of their concerns and thoughts as well. Then also, we did some more things in terms of communication with parents. They really wanted to know what was going on academically in the district. And so we did a quarterly newsletter that was done electronically, where we actually talked about the exciting things that were going into all of not only the core content areas, but also our specials. And so they had a sense of what was going on and some unique projects that were going on. And then we also uplifted some of our teachers who were doing unique things. The unions, I had open door policies, but I actually had standing meetings with my unions. And so that we would eliminate any grievances before they came to a head. And so we had that opportunity to talk and to really work out issues before they became more than what we wanted them to become. I want to tell you, I have had experiences working with unions in terms of negotiations of contracts. Some I've done on my own, some I've done with legal counsel. And when I say on my own, that's with a team of administrators, but sometimes, particularly with teachers, I would work with the legal aspect. And then the community. So, you know, there's different layers, but what's important is that each layer has the opportunity to be able to connect with the superintendent and to be visible and to be able to listen to the voices. And so that last piece of that question was also how do you connect with groups that may feel that they have not been heard, you know, the more diverse groups, the groups of color particularly. And so for me, it's important that, again, allowing them to have a voice and to be heard. I know, for instance, when I served in New Bedford, large Cape Verdean population. So I did a lot of work with the organizations and groups around that, and even to the point where they were concerned that students were losing or didn't know about their culture. So we actually did a big project with some 3 school districts in Cape Verde where we connected, and via technology, we had a working relationship where we did projects together, conferences, and so on. So there's just, there are ways to engage people. You need to really listen to them and what they feel in terms of, are you really truly hearing me? Are you recognizing my voice? And so let me see the response to you after I have shared what my concerns are.
Thank you. The next question will be read by Carrie Greene.
Hi, Carrie Greene. I've been on the school committee for close to 10 years with a little time off in between. I have 2 kids, one who graduated Mount Greylock in 2012 and one who is a rising junior. My question is about COVID. We're dealing with an unprecedented number of logistical, educational, environmental, and health issues in response to the current pandemic. How do you chart a course in these challenging circumstances? How do we create safe and robust educational programs in the different educational environments?
Okay. So first of all, what's important is that I would be coming in midway through the changes that COVID has caused. And since that I'm saying that we've just finished the last few months of schooling, which was like no other. And so partly is to really kind of talk with groups to say, what did that look like? Because I was not in the district. So how was that rolled out? How did parents feel about what was offered on our remote learning sites? You know, and what can we do differently to really assess and reflect on what was done? And I think in most districts, what the goal was to keep engagement of students. It was really about that, not necessarily about the richness of the content that was offered, but about keeping them engaged during a time such as this. And so after assessing that, taking a look at what is our plan moving forward, taking a look at what has the conversation been about, you know, what would a hybrid look like? What would full reopening look like? What would distance learning look like? What are we going to do? When are we going to start? How are we going to prepare our teachers? A matter of fact, this would be the first pretty much month, the focus would be, you know, coming into the succession of coming into the district. This would be the total focus. And then taking a look at whatever plan or way that we go, the richness of what we offer. And this is so incredibly important in terms of making sure that we're still meeting standards even virtually, and that can be done. It can be done with a blended type learning format, and really working with our teachers and using all of our resources. I mean, you'll be amazed that teachers are very creative, and we haven't tapped into their creativity in a while because we've been pushing standards and testing, but they want to use that creativity and to be efficient in that creativity, meaning that, for instance, if you have, let's say, 6 third grades, I'm just going to randomly pull this, and that's between the two elementary schools. Well, if you can have teachers who volunteer to work on one part of the curriculum where, let's say that they're working on ELA, and so let's say that that teacher then begins to record and to teach and to do different lessons, and that teacher becomes the guru for that particular topic. And that's what's used as a resource for all the third graders. So they're all actually getting the same content and they're seeing that, but then yet the teachers, in terms of their responses and so on, will be done by the assigned teacher. It's just a new format and a new way to look at things and to be more efficient and effective in terms of what we're doing. High school, again, most of those teachers probably already know how to use the virtual learning as a piece of their instruction. And so here again, they could continue to teach, but yet still add that rigor where you're asking students to begin to respond and to interact with one another in terms of the students, although it might be virtually, but you still can have that richness. The only thing that's different is that you don't have that face-to-face sometimes. But I think what's most important is how do you keep that rigor if it becomes true distance learning, and then to ensure that all of our students have access to the internet. You know, that is pretty incredibly important, and if they don't, that we work with organizations or bodies where they can come to be a hot spot for them where they can actually do their work during that time and day. To set up schedules that are realistic for kids. You know, you don't want kids sitting at a screen for 6 hours, you know, and as well as teachers. So you have to be creative in terms of how things are done. So for me, that was multiple components to that question, I know, and hopefully I've covered all of it. But what's key is that knowing that whenever you begin to enter a district, and because in the times that we're in, the real true focus would be about that reopening, but making sure that we are providing just a rich education that we would if we were in the classroom with our kids.
Thank you. The next question will be read by Stephen Mill.
Hello, so I have 2 kids in the district, one at Williamstown Elementary, one at Mount Greylock, and I've been on the committee for around 6 years. So my question is, how do you grapple with issues of inclusion and all its ramifications in and outside the classroom?
Okay, and to be specific, is that inclusion for special needs, ELL, or students in general?
You have the freedom to take the question as you wish.
Okay. Let's see if I can tap on all 3 of those. So we'll start with special needs students, which probably were truly most affected by our COVID-19 pandemic that we're in right now. You know, how do you continue to be able to do a rich or to provide a rich learning environment for students who have special needs and have things that requires people to be pretty much in contact with them. So how do you do that? And it can be done, you know, depending on the need of the child. And so you can still continue with that co-teaching model in terms of students with the special needs and tapping in. But what's key is that in our co-teaching models, we sometimes pull small groups. And so you know, as a district, we can pull small groups within that virtual learning model. And I'm just going to focus on the virtual learning model and still do that rich teaching that you would do in a classroom that you do, you know, and that small group setting should have not only special needs students, but regular ed students, whoever might be, who may ever need that extra instruction on whatever topic that you're learning. In terms of inclusion, let's say inclusion of students of different ethnicities. And so in terms of your district, I believe you're about 88% Caucasian, and then the rest would be mixed races, large Asian and Hispanic population, very small African American population. But yet they're still important to your district because they're a part of your community. So how do you, in terms of making sure that they feel included? And so there are different models that you can do in terms of that multicultural curriculum. But here it's about really engaging the parents in terms of what do they want inclusion to look like for their child, in terms of, just feeling that they have a voice at the table, that in the midst of the curriculum, that they feel that they are a part of the learning, and using resources that may be from their culture, so that they can feel connected to those topics. So those are some pieces in which you can do. And so there's so much that can be done in terms of the curriculum, so for students to feel included in the topics, where they don't feel so disengaged and disenfranchised, that they feel that, well, this is about me, and I think I should listen up, and that I have something that I can contribute to.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question will be read by, an introduction will be Al Terranova.
You're right. We do look like Hollywood squares right now.
It does.
Who's Paul Lynn? That's what I want to know. My name is Al Terranova. I've been on the committee for about 5 years. My term is up in November. I'm not going to run for re-election. Prior to that, I spent 10 years on the Lanesboro Finance Committee, 4 of them as a chairperson. My wife and I are empty nesters, but both our children went to Mount Greylock. They both graduated Mount Greylock. And we look forward to going on. I noticed you're a Purdue Boilermaker.
Oh, say that.
You went to Purdue?
I did. I'm a Boilermaker.
A Big Ten.
Yes.
We are not going to ask you why the Big Ten had 14 teams. We're not, but we will ask other questions. I've been practicing this for 2 days, so bear with me. If you were selected for this position, what would be your process for taking over the helm of the superintendency?
Okay. So I somewhat shared a little bit about that in terms of addressing the COVID-19 and reopening. But first of all, really getting to know the school committee, sitting down with them, and really having a conversation of a little bit of the history and culture of the community, and then listening to their direction in terms of what they would like to see. Some may want to say just status quo, we like where we are. Some may want to see increased rigor. But it's an opportunity to have that conversation to see where the school committee are in terms of moving forward. The second piece is to really have conversation with the interim superintendent and the principals, to really, because I believe that if a plan has not yet been submitted for reopening schools, that's priority. I believe your commissioner is requiring that to be done by the middle of August. And so that would be to say, okay, I expect that there was probably a committee that helped you to put this together, because let's bring that committee back together and to have a conversation before formalizing that plan, making sure on that committee that there's representation for all stakeholders, parents, students, community, and educators of the like, and making sure that everybody's voice is heard. But do know that finally a decision will have to be made. And so once that decision is made, how to get that information out to the public and to, I don't want to say sell it to the public, but give them a sense that there is safety in the midst of the plan, and begin to roll it out. There also should be enough time where you're meeting with teachers and preparing them. I believe that the commissioner has set aside 10 days for working with educators in terms of their preparation, in terms of whatever the plan may be for the district, what direction, how they should prepare, and really working together to get our curriculum and content ready for students, to meet students. What will our days look like? What will the scheduling look like? Do we have the buildings ready to receive the students? There's so much to be done as that plan is rolled out, and making sure the buildings are clean, that we have the appropriate PPEs, not only for extras for the staffing, but even for our nurses and our social workers. There's so much to be done. So that would definitely be pretty much taking up the focus. And normally, when you enter a district, you just want to really kind of greet and meet and really find out the stakeholders and meet with groups. But because of the timing and the lateness of preparation, is really to have that time to kind of roll with what needs to be in place. Once a plan is agreed upon and we pretty much are well scheduled into what we're going to do in the schooling and get schooling on the way, then it's really about taking a step back and meeting the appropriate groups, meeting with community members, and because there are two towns involved, really spending time with both communities and in a way that we can bring them together. And it's going to be unique because we have to be mindful of social distancing. So what will that look like, and how will we be able to do that? And then looking at kind of rolling out where we need to go from there, looking at the data of the district, looking in terms of the achievement and where we want to go, and setting goals. There's so much to be done. But I would say probably my first month there would be really focusing on the reopening and having the plan in place and seeing that plan come to fruition and working with the very, very key people to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be read by Jamie Art.
Dr. Bonner, I have a two-part special education question for you. And the first part is, please describe your experience with special needs children and related policies. What does free and appropriate public education mean to you? And then the second part is, how will you ensure FAPE for all students, especially during the pandemic?
Okay. All right, so in terms of special education, and I had an opportunity to share some of the pieces during our meet and greet, but just in case those of you did not hear, in terms of my philosophy is really about including our special needs students in the classroom as much as possible. And so that comes with making sure there are supports in the classroom. And so I truly strongly believe in co-teaching models. I believe in the use of paraprofessionals, but paraprofessionals in the sense that they are facilitators and not doing the work for the child. I want them, the goal is for the child to learn to become independent as much as possible, depending upon their IEP. And so those are some key models in which I have used, and I have trained educators on terms of the co-teaching model, how that best works. There must be time set aside for the teachers to plan together so that it can unfold in their classroom. And to the point where when you're co-teaching, you can't tell which is the special ed and the regular ed teacher. That kind of blending is needed. Then in terms of, just to kind of speak to that in terms of, how do you do that in a distance learning model, you still need to keep that same type of model. It's just, now it's just done virtually. And again, I mentioned just pulling out small groups as needed in order to kind of reiterate the instruction, or and that helps with any child who might be, who needs intervention as well, not just the disabled. So in terms of policies, I will share that particularly in New Bedford, we had a very strong special education program. We had some outside consultants that worked with us, but they worked with us in such a way where we were able to really bring some programs back into district and have very strong programs. Of course, a larger district, but the goal was to really keep the costs down. And we felt that we could do a better job in terms of providing the resources for our students. And best of all, we kept the child in their own community, so they felt that they belonged. And that's incredibly important for special needs students. And in terms of the difficulties, you mentioned Faith, and keeping in mind of those policies. That's probably the most difficult piece about using technology now. How do we protect our children? You know, technology, although it's a good thing, it could unfortunately allow access to our children. And so how do we protect our children and to make sure that their rights are protected? And so that's a conversation to look at our policies that we currently have in district, and are they up to date? And are we keeping that in mind as we plan for whatever's to become in terms of our reopening, particularly if we continue with the distance learning or hybrid model, what that's going to look like, you know, and especially if we begin to start videotaping what's happening in a classroom and showing that on the screen, trying to do that without showing students, or even in the midst of when kids come and are participating online, how to protect them. Those are conversations to begin to have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The next question will be read by Allie Carter.
Hi again. Can you please describe your management style as it relates to district employees who report to you either directly or indirectly, as well as the larger community who've entrusted their children's care to you? And can you provide examples?
Okay. So I am, as I pointed out, I think a little earlier, that I am not a top-down type management. I'm very collaborative in terms of not only decision-making, but each person is hired at the district level because of the gift and the knowledge and skill sets that they bring. And so for me, I like to tap into that, you know, and it's incredibly important to value individuals' skill sets and to utilize them. And so I know sometimes in terms of management, the top gets all the blame for anything that goes wrong, and I'm okay with that. But for me, and I usually will take that too, by the way, I will always stand up for any decision that's made as a group, as a team, and not target anyone who is working within the team, within the central office team. So in terms of my management style, as I pointed out, I'm very collaborative in my approach in terms of decision making. I'm not top down. I value everything that people can bring to the table. And as a matter of fact, when I hire people, I look for people who have skill sets that that I am weak in, so that it makes the district even stronger in terms of that. And so to give you some examples in terms of how I work with my team, my peers, as I call them, more than like with central office staff, I usually meet with them once to twice a month to get a sense in terms of what their focus and projects are for that month. If they're working on any grants, or if there's any professional development that's occurring, or any other concerns. Unlike finance, though, I meet with them pretty much weekly. We meet as a team, not individually, not unless there's a desired meeting to meet individually. And the reason why I meet as a team is important that everyone who is a part of the superintendent's cabinet knows what's going on in district. No silos. That's not necessary. It's important that we work as a team. And then, you know, with principals, because there's only 3 in the district here, a little different there, it's important that we meet together as a team. You know, I would do the same thing with them. And normally in my other districts, when I meet with principals, it's not really management pieces. It's really more of kind of a professional opportunity where we either discuss a book that we may be reading in the district. We talk about issues and problems. It allows time and opportunity for principals to share if they're having a problem in their school. You know, have you dealt with something like that? So it's a very different type of approach that I use, but it allows people opportunity to grow in the position that they're in, and to allow sharing so that we're all in this together. And just as I share, is more like a professional development piece with our principals. Some of the books that we have studied, Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. We've done some of the Tipping Point and so on. You know, so there are books that we'll focus on, and we'll pick things out and apply it to something that may be actually occurring in the building that day, and really talk about it and how to address it. So it's an opportunity for them to grow. And it's not, you know, just basic, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that in terms of the management piece. Those things can be sent by email, you know, but it's not a waste of time. It's a time of growth. So hopefully I covered all of that question.
Thank you. I am reading the next question. What issues pertaining to social and emotional well-being would you anticipate arising for staff and students over the course of the pandemic, and how would you best support the mental health of our community during this time?
Okay, so I'm going to start with students first off, because you know, we've really been talking about social emotional learning a great deal, but this is new for kids because, for one, they've been isolated, and there's so much going on in our nation. Not only is COVID-19 a concern, but the racial unrest, the different protests that are occurring. So there's a lot going on, and we don't know how much our children are exposed to that. You know, you try to shut the news off, but we don't know how much they're exposed to it. And then there are some children who may have been in homes where there were not parents who were available for them. You know, you have to think about students who may have family relationships that are not traditional, in the sense that they may have been isolated or alone. So here, again, it begins that we need to prepare our social workers, or actually our social workers are probably more prepared for this than anything. But having them ready and available to deal with some of the breakdowns that might occur during the school day for our children, and having that safe haven for them to go to be able to really have a conversation of the concern. And then preparing our teachers for looking at the signs of you know, of the weariness, or how do you include the social awareness in the midst of teaching the content, you know, being mindful of that, having those breaks and seeing how children are doing. We have to prepare teachers to be able to have those breaks, those mindful breaks in the midst of the day, especially if they're in the classroom. It can also be done virtually as well. but to be really cognizant of the fact that this is a very different world in which we have grown up in, and things are changing. And then the mental health of our teachers. I know that in some of the districts, one district, I actually started an employee assistance program, which was not available to our teachers, but it's a free program, it's offered through their insurance, where they can have free consultation in terms of any needs that they may have, in terms of dealing with the pressures and the stress or the relationships that they had to endure at home. I hear that this is a time where we're waiting to see the statistics of whether we'll have another baby boom or whether the divorce count will be high. So this is a time where people are sheltered in and they have to confront those things that they were able to escape because of the sheltering in. And so, and the pressures of that, and then the concerns of going back to school. And I will say that I have two sisters who are also teachers. We are just a family of educators. And to listen to the stresses that they were going through, learning how to use Google Classroom and distance learning, the amount of stress that came from my siblings was amazing. And I don't think that we realized that educators were affected. They're affected. And so we have to be mindful of those things as we come back to school, and we have to have some things in place. So social workers, be ready. School psychologists, be ready. Maybe if there's some outside resources that we can connect with that can be available is very, very key. And really tap into those resources, but to become aware of those things that are in need, and to be willing to have the conversations. Kids can't focus on content if their mind is somewhere else. And do know that we are coming to a head where things are changing, where there's a great deal of unemployment. And so that's going to also affect the home life and poverty and food and so on. And so I know that in terms of your students with high needs, we have to take an account of what those needs may be and be ready as a community to help provide for some of those needs.
Thank you very much. The next question will be read by Carrie Greene. Though I don't see Carrie right now.
I'm back, sorry. I am here. So we're starting our third year of being a pre-K through 12 regionalized district. In many ways, we have come together as one district, but at times our schools seem to be still three separate entities. What are some ways that you might try to bring our communities together to unite around a common vision for our district?
Okay. So excellent. There was one of the students asked a question similar to that in terms of kids come together in the high school, middle school and high school, that they don't really know each other. So let's start at the school level, and then I'll go to the community level. And so for the school level, there are so many things that teachers can do to partner with the schools. They should be sister schools. And I've participated in some grants in different districts where we connected with schools in district and outside of our district to really kind of strengthen relationship. And so I'm going to use the model of the interdistrict sister school to help with building relationships. So here we would do different projects, particularly science projects, where kids would actually be sharing online with other students, kind of having a type of pen pal relationship. You're partnering up with another student at another school. You get to know them, working with other teachers in the classroom. So you're actually interacting with another classroom. And And then, you know, working throughout the marking period, doing these kinds of projects together, but then having a culmination project where you actually gather together, which COVID might put a little damper in that, but to gather together and have a culminating experience where each group, each students from that class are gathered together and getting to know each other. And that can be done from grade to grade, and having the mind that the two principals are working together and the teachers in those grades are working together. And that's incredibly important. It allows teachers from the different schools to interact with each other as they're planning their lessons. And so that's one avenue to create kind of that joint community sister partnership with the schools. Then the other piece too, in terms of the community, which is really how do you tie the two communities together? And so some of that comes with activities. If you were to join the two schools together, let's say that they had, we'll use the band, for instance, that it's a joint band concert. So here's an opportunity for the community of the different towns to come together and to gather, kind of have a reception at the beginning, and then the actual band concert. And it would be nice that if the band concert wasn't by the two schools, but it was a joint concert where they're all playing, and that can be done. So there are many different things that can be done, having an open-mindedness in terms of bringing community members together and really celebrating and really looking at the value that of having a regional district such as this, not only in terms of the cost savings, but the uniqueness of really using the resources to be more efficient of the resources is incredibly key, and to kind of remind parents of that and what are the benefits and why we're doing what we're doing and how to do it better. So there are different things that we can do to bring the communities together, and the key is the willingness to be able to do it and to kind of celebrate. I will share, you know, when I mentioned about working with our principals and doing some readings, one of the books that we read, Growth Mindset, was actually a town read. And we actually had town discussions around the book, you know, and so it's just another way, again, for interacting with the community. So here you can do things such as this and really have conversations around different topics.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question will be read by Stephen Miller.
So continuing talking about bringing people together, what is your vision regarding the roles of athletics and the arts in the culture of the school and community? What do you feel is the relationship between athletics, the arts, and academics across the pre-K-12 spectrum?
Okay, so a little bit of background. I am a musician. I play the piano a little, and so I love the arts. I relish the arts. Very, very important. And I'm not as athletic, although my heart beats as if I'm an athlete, but I am definitely not athletic. But they all have a role in holistically rounding out our student. And so just to kind of share in pieces of, we'll start with the music and the and arts, visual and so on. Those are the opportunities in which students can take everything that they've learned in their core courses and apply them. Music is nothing but the application of math throughout. It really, truly is. And art is one single way to really use 21st century skills in terms of not only creativity, but the approach in which you take to create. You know, whether you are sculpting or whether you are painting or actually creating videos and so on. But it is an opportunity for our kids to begin to apply all those wonderful things that we have learned. Athletics is key to not only in terms of learning how to work in a team, which is incredibly important. it really teaches the basics of social emotional learning in terms of respecting others spaces, and learning how to work with others, even when you are different. Working together towards a single goal, incredibly important. So that's important. And then also the fact that it makes you healthy, long-term wellness. It's incredibly important. So, and I know that when you're doing budgets, those are unfortunately the first things that people look at, because, in terms of the importance of core content over that. But to me, there should be a balance for students. And you will see that students need to succeed. And so they can succeed in these areas where they have passion. That was another question that one of the students asked about, in terms of what do we see as success? And here is an opportunity where a student who may not necessarily be so good in science or math, but really excel in the arts. And so we have to provide opportunity for them to be able to live out their potential. There we go, their potential.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. The final question will come from Al Terranova.
I'm back. How are you holding up?
I'm doing okay. Hopefully you all can hear me.
We can see the finish line. 100 meters to go.
Thank you.
Pump your arms and go forward. If you can, could you read this in the first person? If you were a high school student in 2020, what would you worry about?
Oh my gosh. So I would tell you right now, I would be very, very overwhelmed. I would be very, very concerned about my future. But then on the backside of that, I would also have hope in my future, in the sense that here is an opportunity for my generation to impact and make changes in our world, in our nation. And so how can we do that? How can I do that in my graduating class? How can I impact the change? And I got to tell you, although it is crazy and scary times, it is also exciting times. We have an election coming up. We're watching two political parties come head to head, pretty much fighting for their lives and how they're shaping our world and our communities and our nation. And so here it's like, okay, this is the year I'm graduating. I'll be able to vote in my first presidential election. I can make an impact. I can, let's talk about what's going on in our community. How can I impact our community to make change? It's an exciting time. But you got to know the heart is beating because you're not sure in terms of what tomorrow will look like. But the key is, how can all of the education that I received from Mount Greylock Regional District, how can I use that to better the world that we live in and to make an impact? So that's what I would say as a graduating senior.
Thank you. Al, we have 3 minutes left for the follow-up question, if you're prepared to ask the follow-up.
I sure am. I'm multitasking here, so you have to bear with me. Traditionally, secondary schools have started early in the day, and elementary schools have started later in the day. What is your opinion about traditional school day order, and on what educational or developmental theory do you base your opinion on?
Okay. So there is a great deal of research that has come out actually recently in terms of the start of the school day, particularly for our high school students. They feel that teenagers need the rest and that they do better after a certain time. And that our little ones, you know, they're energetic, they're ready, they're motivated, they're ready to move. I think that traditionally we have always started with high school students starting early in the morning to give them time where if they do have a job after school that they can do that, or it allows time for sports and practice and so on. Always mindful of that. And then also the consideration was that the older child will be home when the younger child gets home from elementary school if there's no parents in the home to receive them. So those have been some of the traditions and what the research is saying in terms of the better health for students. But I will say recently, actually the beginning of last school year, in the state of Connecticut, we had a group of students who really didn't want the time of the start of high school to change because it was going to affect their day. They're saying that it will push everything back in terms of the games. It was particularly the athletes. They were so concerned about the time that the games would occur. It would cut into their school day, you know, if the games were early or the same time. They wouldn't have time for their homework and so on. The altering of the day caused so much conflict. So for me, being nonpartisan, I would ask the community, what would they prefer in terms of their children? You know, what's best? What's going to be best for them? The other piece too is that I know when working in East Haven, we had early start for them, but we did it so that also students could take part in some of the college courses that were available to them for our students who were in the middle college and so on. So there's just so many opportunities, and it's pretty much in terms of what is the feeling in terms of the school committee and the community in terms of that start. How much would it upset the rest of the day for the high school student? And then also transportation usually is an issue too in terms of how the shifting of the day. So hopefully I've covered that question. And I saw you smile when I said nonpartisan.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bonner. That was the last question. Do you have any questions for the school committee?
No, but I would just like to say thank you again for the opportunity. It has been a joy, and this has been a unique experience doing the interview online. And I know that you have a hard decision to make, but an important decision to make. And the amount of time and the timing is just, I'm so sure, it's very, very key to you. And so I wish you the best in your decision making. I hope that you find that my skill set and knowledge is something that could be what you are looking for in the district. But if not, I do wish you the best in your choice, and I truly wish you the best in terms of the upcoming school year and the decisions that have to be made ahead. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. Okay, school committee, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
No, Miller seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, roll call alphabetically.
Hurt, aye.
Carter, aye.
Conry, aye.
Green, aye.
Miller, aye.
Terranova, aye.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 12:12 p.m. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Bonner.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr.
Bonner.
Bonner.
Thank you,
Dr. Bonner.
Liz.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
This afternoon, we still on?